All right, we should be live. Let me just check, make sure everything is going good. And it looks like everything is good. Hi, Solo Wing 88. All right, so today we're going to go ahead and take a look at how to set up controllers to work with the Unity editor. For this demonstration, I've gone ahead and plugged in an Xbox, sorry, I keep calling it Xbox, a PS4 controller. I usually use a Xbox One controller, but today we're going to go ahead and use a PS4. I'm a little under the weather still. A lot of phlegm buildup, so I will be coughing. And just a sec. Excuse me. I took some cough medicine, but it's helped a bit, but it hasn't gotten rid of all of it. But anyway, welcome back from the land of cards. I streamed one night cards. That was it. But anyway, that's not what this is about. So let's go ahead. We're going to go plug a joystick in. It doesn't matter which one you have. Most work, at least as far as like the big brands, like the Xbox 360, the PS3, Xbox One, and the PS4. A lot of the off-brand ones, you might have a little bit of trouble. But if you go ahead and do a Google search for your particular controller, which I have already. In this case, it's the PS4 controller. You do get a layout of what all the buttons and axes are. Now, I know this one here has a few errors in it. This is the fourth axis. But that's fine. You're probably not going to find, it might take you a bit to find one, I should say, that has all of them mapped out fine, but that's part of the joy. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the project as I have it set up right now. I'm just actually going to shrink this down. I don't have enough room. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit play. And just using the keyboard, we do have some debug out here for the X and Y. Don't worry about that. We'll look at that in a bit. I can go left, right, forward, backwards, and I can even jump. Now this is great. We've done this tons of times with just using keyboard input. Let's go ahead. We'll take a look at the code. Again, nothing special here. I just want to show the axes that I'm using. So I'm going into the input manager and I'm using the button jump whenever I have assigned for that. I also have the axes for horizontal and vertical. Now we've gone over the difference between get axes and get axes raw. Actually, I think it's get, well, I already forget now. Oh, shouldn't have taken cough syrup. It's get axis raw, right? Yeah. We've gone over that already. Basically, what happens is Unity with get axes applies a little bit of smoothing to how fast it accelerates and how fast it'll deaccelerate. Hi, Randy. And I'm sorry, don't speak Russian, can't pronounce that name. But with get axes, it adds that smoothing. It's really just season to taste. If you want to have super precision, you might want to go ahead and use, oh my God, it's going to be bad. Oh, excuse me. If you want that super precision, you might want to go ahead and use get axis raw, especially if your game is only going to be allowed to play with the controller. That's fine. Again, whether or not you use get axis raw is totally up to you. But anyway, so those are the three inputs that I'm going to be using with. So let's jump into Unity and actually take a look at them. So I have the input manager over here. I've gone ahead and locked it. So when I'm clicking out of it, it doesn't disappear because we're going to spend a lot of time in it this video. But to get to it, you just go to edit, project settings, input. And when it first opens up, it might be closed or something like this. You might want to open it up. And a lot of people, when they first start working with the joystick inputs, will come up here, put a 0, which erases everything that you already have up here. And they'll just go ahead and say, I don't know, I only need 5 inputs. So they'll put a 5 in there and they'll get 5 empty ones that they'll configure right from scratch. I don't like to configure it from scratch. I just like to take what's already there and modify it. And not only that, a lot of times I want to be able to test my game with the keyboard and mouse anyway. So I leave all the defaults in. If I need more, I'll just add them to it. And you can do that either just by right clicking. You can duplicate one. Let's say this is the joystick jump. Let's say I wanted to hook up another button on my controller. I could go ahead, duplicate it. And maybe this one's super jump. And I can go ahead, set a different button for it and everything else. And later on, when we don't want these other ones anymore, you just right click and delete. So what I'm getting at is I wouldn't go rushing off and deleting all of the defaults. Well, by default. I wouldn't follow that, okay? All right. So let's take a look at the horizontal. We're used to this, right? And the vertical. We've done this a lot, right? There's the name, that's the tag we're giving it, or the name that it's referred to. It has some positive and negative keys. In this case, it's the arrows. And then we're used to the WASD controls. We've set all this up before. Of course, gravity, when you're using the keyboard and you're using get axis, that's how fast, when you've pressed the button down and you release it, how fast it goes back to 0. And sensitivity is when you first press it, is how fast it goes from 0 to either 1 or -1, depending if you're pushing the positive or negative. And we have it set up to be a keyboard or a mouse button. And that's all you really need to do for it. Same thing with the vertical, but we've looked at all that before. Let's come down here, and by default, Unity already has a bunch of joystick stuff already set up for you. And this is the horizontal for the joystick. So take note, it has the exact same name. You can have multiple inputs that have the same name. And when you call it here, you can actually get input from whatever you have set up. So maybe I've got another joystick or another input device that I've set up, and it can pass an input as well under horizontal. So I could actually have 3 different devices that are capable of being used. And for debugging and everything else, I like having multiple ones that I can test simultaneously. So when I'm pushing the like the W key and I'm moving around the keyboard, how is all the fluid motion and everything else? Okay, now I can pick up the controller and I can start moving around with that. Now, how fluid is it? How does it compare? Now, maybe I've got that 3rd input device. I can pick that up, start using it. Maybe, see how smooth that is. So again, I like having multiple ones. So we'll notice that it doesn't have anything here for positive and negative like we do up here. And that's because we're actually using the joystick axes, which are defined down here. But I did want to point out that we don't need gravity on the controller, because when you let it go, it automatically snaps back down to, well, 0 for you. And depending on the controller is how fast it'll snap there. And sensitivity of 1, when you push it all the way forward, it should go all the way. Let's say like the positive 1 is forward and -1 is back. Or in this case, in horizontal, it's left and right. So when I push to the left, I should go all the way to -1. If I push to the right, it goes all the way to +1. If I were to go ahead and put this at 0.5 for sensitivity, I would only actually be able to achieve half that value. So if I push all the way to the right, I could only ever get to 0.5. Likewise, into the negative direction, you get -0.5. So you can tighten up the, sensitivity with this. If you want to go ahead and make him get to 1 or -1 faster, you can increase this number. And I will be doing that in a bit. That's why I have this opened up over here. But we'll look at that when we get to it. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to compare it to the horizontal up here. It's set to a key or mouse. Excuse me. We're down here. We're now setting it to joystick axis. And we're going ahead and using the X axis by default. There's 28 of them that we can go ahead and play around with. Depending on the controller you're using, is going to dictate what axis it is. And for now, I'm going to go ahead. Whoops, didn't mean to open that. I'm going to go ahead and get the input from all joysticks. If you're making something like a 4-player game, you might want to go ahead and set up 4 different joysticks and only get the input, for player 1. Instead of being horizontal, you could have player 1 horizontal, and that only comes from joystick 1. But for this demonstration, we're just going to go ahead and just get all the inputs. Just a sec, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Erich, how you doing? Hopefully I pronounced that. Anyone has any questions as I'm going along, just go ahead and post them in chat. Unfortunately, for a live stream, they don't get carried over to the actual published video. So hopefully I remember to actually read out the questions. But anyway, so let's go ahead and take a look. This is set to the X for horizontal. And the vertical is set to the Y axis. If we go back to that little printout, and to be honest, I already know that there's a complete printout on Reddit. So I went ahead and took a look and compared it to mine. And I believe this here to be all accurate. But I find the image, the visual, a little bit easier for people to follow. So go ahead, take a look at that Reddit post. I believe all of them are actually accurate here and some of these are wrong. But anyway, this is what we're going to use to move. So for the horizontal, we're going to use X. And this should say Y axis for the vertical. So if we start it up. Excuse me. Man, it's getting worse. And I've got the controller. And I push to the left, push to the right, push up, push down. I'm pushing down on an angle there. And of course, you've got all 360 degrees of control. By default, well, we'll look at the buttons next. So no questions there, right? We know how to set these up. Make sure it's set to an axis. You assign the axis that you want it to be on. You get that axis from, well, the internet or a lot of testing. Go to the internet first. And not a whole lot to it. For the Y, take note of the invert. A lot of joysticks are like this. When you push forward, you're actually getting a negative number. And when you pull back, you'll get a positive number. And that's great, maybe if you're making a flight sim or something like that. But if you don't want that by default, let me go ahead and just start this up. Pushing forward, we notice that I'm getting a -1. Pull back, I'm getting a 1. Don't want that for my particular game. So I'm going to go ahead and invert it. It's that simple. All right, so we've looked at axes. Hopefully you should be able to assign new ones. As you want to make more axes, I still wouldn't go ahead and increase this count. So like 19 gives me a new one. It's going to copy the last one that was done. I don't like doing it that way. I used to do it that way. Now, if I want to make a new axis, I'll just go ahead and duplicate and then just start writing it in there. I don't think you can order these, can you? That's about the only downside of that. If you really want it at the end of the list, then go ahead and do it that way. Okay, never mind. I was seeing if you could actually add at the end of the list or something like that. Anyway, so let's go ahead and we'll start taking a look at buttons. So we have a jump button here. This is the keyboard one. We can tell because it has the positive button for space. It's got its gravity and sensitivity and else set up. We also see that it's using a key and mouse, and everything else underneath it is irrelevant. This is the one that's set up for our joystick. And again, by default, this one was already set up in Unity. I am using Unity 5.6 in this version, but I think it's actually all set up in 5.5 as well. But again, it uses the jump name, same as we have up here. And for the positive button, it's using joystick button 3. Let's go ahead. We'll jump back into Safari. Joystick button 3, if we follow it, goes to the triangle. And I am going to switch it to the X later, which is joystick button 1. And that's exactly what they're called. It's just joystick, space, button, space, and the number. I'm going to switch to 1 right off the bat. And of course, we have the settings and everything else down here. And outside of that, it looks exactly like the jump up here. I do like to keep them separate. As I said later on, if I don't want to use the keyboard, I can come up and just delete all my keyboard commands. But before I delete any of these things, I'll come into my project. Let's give me a list view. Come into project settings, and we have this input manager here. This is where we're saving everything. It's not a very big file. It's only 6K right now. I'll come down, create a new folder, call it PS4, and then I'll just copy that into there. That way there, the next time I want to go ahead and use my PS4 input settings, I already have that file made, and I have it stored off in some other drive, and I can just drag and drop it in, so I don't have to keep setting up all of my controllers every time I want to use them. And of course, if something ever changes, I just got to change it one spot, and then I can go ahead and throw up on a GitHub or something like that and just grab it from there. Quickly catch. Excuse me. Boy, I do miss my old mixer where I had that mute. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead, snap this back. It's not letting me snap it all the way over. Why not? Doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead, hit play. Now when I hit the X, I jump. And when I hit the triangle, I don't. Great. So setting buttons up is pretty easy, right? You just go ahead. You can duplicate it. Like I said, we do have 3 fires already set up. From here down, at least to here's all joystick stuff. I'd have to go ahead and take a look at here. Here's one where it's set up for both. It's set up to, to take either the return from the keyboard or the joystick button 0. You could also do that for jump up here. Go ahead and set that as an alternate positive. Again, I personally, it's just personal preference. I like to keep them separate. Let me check this one. This one here is set up purely for keyboard, right? There's no joystick input, and it's just buttons. And cancel, it looks like it's set up for both. All right. And I'm sorry, once again. Oh. It's funny how fine you feel until you actually start talking, and that just rattles everything up. Okay. So we set buttons up. We've set axes up. We know how to do those. Let's actually go ahead. I want to go ahead and take a look down here. And I'm going to go horizontal and vertical. And this is something I do with almost every game I do. If I go ahead and push to the left, so we're going to go look at the X part, I can never get it to -1. I can get it to 1 pushing to the right, but to the left, I've gotten it to 0.99 something, but I've never been able to actually get it right to -1. And this is where the sensitivity comes in. All joysticks are a little bit different. So what I like to do is increase the sensitivity. No more than 10% is usually what you need, maybe even 5% or maybe even 3%. You shouldn't really need more than 10%, but I'm going to do it in all the directions just to keep it spherical in movement. So now when I go ahead and push to the left, I get to -1. Likewise, when I push to the right, I get the 1, I get the 1, I get the -1 on the Y. And that way there, I know that my player is moving, when he pushes to the left, is moving as fast as possible to the left. And as I said before, if you want to go ahead and make it move super fast, let's do 2 by 2. Well, I shouldn't say make it move super fast. It's still going to move at the same speed. It's just how much distance you have to travel on the joystick to get there. So as soon as I start pushing just a little bit left, I'm at halfway, and I'm already at -1, and I still have quite a bit of play. Not sure if you can really see that well. And it doesn't go any faster than -1. The Unity input system will not go above 1 or below -1. Again, depending on the game you're making, these controls are pretty much seasoned to taste. You can get a unique feel to your game, but I like them to be able to hit the whole range of -1 to 1. And that's why I'll use either a 10% increase, 5% increase, something like that. Any questions? If we wanted to go ahead and map out this whole controller, like I said, I could go ahead and do more. As far as right click, we could map out the other stick. Or we could actually just go in here and do it. I think we did it, didn't we? I did a video before this and I figured out, well, why don't we just make it a live stream? If we went ahead and took a look at our layout here, and it says use the 3rd axis for horizontal, 6th axis for vertical. I know it's the 4th, so I'll just fix that now. So I could use the 3rd axis and the 4th axis. We'll start it up. And now when I touch this stick, it does nothing. But when I use this one, it moves. Okay, pretty simple. Of course, it's going to be hard to push that X button set up like that. And let's take one more look at the controller, make sure I'm not missing anything. Again, if you have any questions, make sure to go ahead and post them. If we're looking at the controller here, everything has a button assigned to it. Obviously you can use pressing the joystick as a button, and it's button 10 according to this diagram. I don't really trust this diagram, but another thing is some controllers for their triggers, or in some cases like the D-pad that we're seeing here, they'll share I'm sorry. They'll share an axis. So for instance, let's take the left and right on the D-pad here. This button here, when you're pressing it, you're going to get a value on the 7th axis. According to this, it's going to be between 0 and -1. And when you start pressing this one here, you're going to get a value between 0 and 1. And I believe it actually just jumps straight to it. It's just going to go ahead and just give you a 1 or give you a -1. But with stuff like the triggers, not on this controller, but I think on some of the PS or the Xbox One controllers. I don't know why. Let me take a look here. Well, anyway, we'll take a look at this here. When you go ahead and use the left trigger, you're going to get a value between 0 and -1. And for the right one, you'll get a value between 0 and +1. There are some controllers out there that I've played around with that share the same axes. And let's say in this case, it was, axis 5, it was shared between both of them. And the values that you're going to get are when you press this one, just like before on that particular axis, 0 to -1, and then 0 to +1. And it's kind of cool for games that you want to have, maybe like a teetering effect or some sort of like balancing effect. Those are pretty cool. Of course, you can still do it just using 2 axes and just using the value between the two, but it was just kind of a cool mechanic. Take note of that some of the buttons aren't really buttons. They can be used as triggers, and some of them, if we go back to the PS4, can be used as buttons or axes. So once you've pushed it in enough, you can just register it as a button. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to go over for your controller. So if you have any questions, make sure to go ahead, post those into chat, and I'll answer them. And this video was about 10 minutes longer than I originally planned. Let's see, we covered saving them. I'm just going over a list here. I guess it would have helped to send that tweet out before I started. So setting up everything, code, movement, invert, project settings. Yep, I've covered everything. So I guess with that said, we're going to go ahead. We'll end this video here just so it doesn't get too long. We'll ramble on. Hopefully I feel a little bit better by the weekend and we can start getting into more live streams. I do have a few things planned for the roguelike game. What are we we're going to work on the cell class next, so we can go ahead and keep a nice list of cells. And then after that, we're either going to start working on corridors to connect them all to. I was thinking of going ahead and using Perling Noise for that. Or we're going to start taking a look at stuff like spawns and things like that. Oh, there's tons of stuff we can pick from. But anyway, yep, that's fine. This is going to be, since it was so, excuse me, since this was so short, it should be encoded and uploaded right away. Hi, Chris. Yeah, I forgot to send the tweet out ahead of time. I had it all typed up, just didn't hit send. Too many things out on that monitor over there. Okay, well, this is Unity 5.6 beta. It should be out, the official Unity 5.6 this month. It's slated for this month. We're over halfway through, so really it should be any time now. But the input works the exact same way in Unity 5. Any other questions? I know there's a little bit of delay on YouTube, so we'll go ahead and give you a few seconds here. I'm dying. All right. I knew that was going to be a really big one, so I went ahead and hit mute. I'm sure I will. I actually feel much better. I don't, like, the fever's gone, the upset stomach and everything else. It's just that buildup of mucus that I'm just trying to get rid of. It takes time. Okay, it doesn't look like there's going to be any other questions. So I'm going to end this here before it gets too long and people have to come back and watch it. And there's like 20 minutes at the end of me just coughing and chit-chatting. But yeah, hopefully I feel better a little bit sooner and we can get more of these going. Tell me, do you prefer the live videos better, or do you prefer just the short videos uploaded and you can watch them like that? You can't reorder the list. That's what I was looking at earlier. You can duplicate, you can delete, you can add to the end. And when you duplicate, it goes right underneath whatever one you duplicated. But you can, and if you want to add to the end, you can add another one, but it just copies whatever was at the end. You can erase the whole thing by putting a 0 in there. If you make this shorter, so like you just did 5, it would delete all of them except for the 5. I'm not going to put a 0 in here because it's going to lose all of these. So even if I put a 0 in, then put an 18 in again right after, it does not save these. But yeah, there's no way to drag and drop and order these. It'd be nice. That way there you could really, later on if you want to add more, let's say keyboard inputs, I have to right click and duplicate it and then add it there. That's the only way to do it right now as far as ordering goes. To be honest, I don't use the input system that much anymore. I know they had plans of updating it. They said that, I don't know, it was like a year ago or something like that, and I've heard nothing about it. And I do not think there's anything about it on the roadmap, right? Just open up another tab here. Roadmap. Let's take a quick look. Input. Oh, there is something here. Input system. And experimental preview. So they probably have something for you to go ahead and play around with. I have not taken a look at it. So it's going to be event-based frame-independent input delivery system. Oh, going to compete with mine. Custom device creation, more consistency between platforms and input devices. That'd be nice because it's kind of annoying when you got to go ahead and set up all these different controllers and they all have different input axes and everything else. I know eventually I wanted to sit down and write a script where it would just monitor all the buttons and axes. That way there, when I pressed a button, it would just tell me what button was pressed. I could never actually get that working right. I couldn't get access to, well, all the stuff that I needed. So hopefully they change that. Input device better support for multiple controller schemes, better separation between input and game logic, deeper API access. That's what I needed. And more customizability. All right, so it looks like they actually have maybe a video, not just a forum post. Okay, well, they have an experimental preview. Maybe I'll go ahead and download and take a look at it. I try not to play around with too much of the experimental stuff. The reason why I grabbed this is I wanted to check out the new navigation system. That's the only reason why I have 5.6. And then it's coming out, it's like right around the corner, so I'm not too worried about it. Not on this machine. I smell popcorn. It's either that or I'm having a seizure and I don't know it. But my family's asleep, unless someone got up. Live. Yeah, the thing about the live streams, I can go ahead and stream live and I just save it off as a video. There's a lot more rambling, but I get to answer questions as they come up. I don't always get to come back to the YouTube comments. And sometimes they're just toxic and I just don't want to be there. The best way for me to answer questions is actually when it's live. It's easier for me. That way there I can just section off like, okay, here's an hour. I'm going to make this 10 to 20 minute video and then answer questions on it. Are you going to do any object pooling tutorials? I'm not sure what you want for object pooling. It's not that big of a concept, right? When you go ahead and start your game, let's say bullets, you go ahead and you figure out, this game is never, my gun fires at a certain speed. There's never going to be more than 100 bullets needed for my scene. So when the game starts off, you make a list or an array, or depending how you want to do it, some collection of bullet prefabs, 100 of them. And then when you shoot, instead of instantiating it, you just grab the first one in the array, shoot it, grab the next one, shoot it, grab the next one, shoot it. And then when it reaches a certain point or whatever your destroy state is, instead of destroying it, you basically deactivate it and move it back either into the pool, depending how you set your pool up. You can either have a pool that you set it back into, or while it's in the pool, you can have an active or deactive flag set on it. It's not hard. There should be tons of stuff out there already on it. And I might have, did I cover that? I know I'm not sure if I've covered it in a video. I know I've done it at least live, but it's not a hard concept. That's fine. It's not a problem about being a minute behind. It's BurgZerg with the BU. That'll show up with the color for me. Anyway, let me see what else we got here. Yeah, they also said they'd have tile maps in 2015. Tile maps are out there. I think they're another experimental thing right now. Yeah, tile maps right here. I was going to go ahead and download it and start playing around with it. I like the videos. I do want to use it in my roguelike game. I think they said, well, yeah, they said 2017. I'd have to go back and take a look. I don't know, like they do have that one webpage where you can go and vote on the stuff that's important to you, and presumably those things that get the most votes get moved up to the top. But they at least have an experimental preview that you can go play around with and give feedback on if it's important to you. What else do we have? I don't think they'll make it that complicated. It's not that hard. I don't publish a whole lot of stuff. Most of the stuff I make is available for maybe like a week or something like that. Then I end up deleting it and just moving on to something else. It's been a long time since I've published a game. Maybe I'll publish the roguelike game when I'm done. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I'll probably get it to like that 80% stage where it's playable, but it just needs some polish. Then I'll get bored of it and move on to something else. Let's see. Yeah, because 5.6. Target. So, well, I guess technically it says target. Maybe it'll be next month. But yeah, I grabbed it because I wanted to play around with the new nav mesh stuff. But anyway, if there's any more questions, here's your chance to post it. I'm going to be heading out soon. Quickly check. Nothing there. Excuse me. Now the mic hopefully isn't picking it up, my coffee up too much when I lean away. I'm trying to get behind it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this one done. 32 minutes. Oh, wait. No, okay. All right, so thanks for showing up, everyone. Maybe we can get another one in tomorrow or the next day. I'm not 100% sure. I'll try to remember to send out a tweet maybe a few minutes before I go live so everyone can get into the room and be ready before I start. I don't like starting the video until I actually go live, so it'll just be empty. But anyway, thanks for showing up, everyone, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.